so many people get stuck in a place. I truly believe that unless we really understand why we're doing what we're doing, then it's nearly impossible to get us to go anywhere different. Understanding where I was in the phase of crisis started to actually kind of give myself grace. So a couple years ago, I actually taught you guys this concept, which is the 3 stages of crisis. So I don't know if some of you were around when I did that. And when I taught you the 3 stages of crisis, I had just learned the concept from my mentor, Brendon Burchard, and we had just come out of COVID. And what was really interesting about the 3 stages of crisis at that point was he was explaining behavior in regards to COVID. And so I was listening to it from that lens, right? Or looking at it from that lens. And then as I was looking at it, I started to see the patterns of behavior that our clients had in why we saw this giant shift in where people were moving and buying houses, and our whole cause and effect of why our market changed and how that happened from COVID. Now, what was so interesting about that at the time is that we thought that all of the shifting, at least in the United States, we thought all that shifting was happening because our interest rates were low. And we thought that was the cause. Like, oh, the interest rates are so low, so now everybody's buying something, which definitely is a factor in it. But what was most interesting is when I talked to my friends in Canada, and they also had the same patterns of behavior, but they did not have a change in their interest rates. So the interest rates were still higher, but yet they saw the same pattern of behavior, which led me to believe and understand that as COVID had happened, this was a reaction and to crisis. This is what the clients were, this is what people were doing, reacting to crisis. So I'm going to go through the 3 stages of crisis and explain those and what each stage is and what happens in each stage. Well, this new layer that I'm going to teach you today, it comes because I was revisiting this topic 2 weeks ago, revisiting this topic. And as I was re-listening to it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in phase 2 of crisis. And now let me explain that. So as you've kind of been around for my divorce journey and the whole just kind of emotional, everything that goes along with that, what I realized a couple weeks ago explained the way that I felt. Understanding where I was in the phase of crisis started to actually allow me to, number one, kind of give myself grace. And number 2, it explained my behavior. It explained why I felt the way that I felt. And then also number 3, it allowed me to now know what I needed to kind of solve for. I say solve for, but like what I was seeking, what I needed to solve for in order to move on to phase 3. Right? So many people get stuck in a place. They get stuck. So we have a life change, something happens, right? And then they get stuck and they don't ever move out of it. I had a friend who had reached out to me. She got divorced 9 years ago. She still is in phase 2. I talked to her about this last week, and I shared with her, the different phases and where I was at and where I was moving toward and what I was doing to move toward that. And she goes, I'm still in phase 2. 9 years later. 9 years later, she's still in phase 2. So it's not about forcing ourselves into a space or getting yourself to move into something before you're ready. But I truly believe that unless we really understand why we're doing what we're doing, where we're at, and why we're behaving the way that we're behaving, then it's nearly impossible to get us to go anywhere different, right? We're not aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So then why would we be changing? We're just living in it. There's no catalyst for change. And what's so cool is that when we can start to be more aware, more self-reflective, kind of recalibrate ourselves a little bit more often, that's how we start to make that faster progress. Now, this does not negate the things that we experience. This is not going to get rid of the emotions that I have to go through or feel when it comes to divorce. It does not get rid of the emotions you feel if you have loss in your life, right? If you have a loved one that passes away, or if you have, something that happens with your children, or if there's some sort of crisis, the crisis comes in all different forms, right? It can be self-crisis, it can be a health crisis, it can be a family crisis, it can be a loss crisis. Crisis happens in so many different ways. And it happens for our clients as well. So the other reason why this is so important is, number one, we always look at it for ourselves and how we can learn from it, how we grow from it, how we apply it in our lives. But it also helps us to better understand others. So now when we come up and we have a client and we're not understanding why they just won't pull the trigger and sell their house, we're not understanding why they just won't take the offer, we're not understanding why they just won't lower the price and just get it done. We don't understand these things, right? It's human behavior. Well, understanding maybe where they're at or what they're going through starts to help us be more empathetic, and it helps us to be able to help them by being empathetic, I think, patient, understanding, and then knowing how to move them because we know what they're seeking. Because in each of these phases, we're seeking for something. That's what's so interesting. And it literally blew my mind last week when I identified that in myself, because I could see, I've completely explained my behavior. It was amazing. And I was like, oh, and then all of a sudden I felt relief because I'm like, of course, this is my behavior then, right? And I'll give you, at the end, I will give you kind of where my behavior was at, what I had identified after I explained the crisis. I'll use myself as an example. So the 3 stages of crisis. So let's start here. So this is our patterns of reaction in crisis. Crisis probably isn't the best word. That sounds like it has to be something like super, super terrible. But any change, I feel like it's almost like the patterns of reaction in change, because change tends to be uncomfortable for us, right? Change. So any change that tends to happen. So maybe that's a better, that might be a little better word. I'm actually going to make a note of that myself. This crisis sounds like it has to be so terrible. And I'm like, no, so many things happen in our lives. Okay. So this is how we're going to advance our lives. So the first thing that happens, the first phase, is we're looking for safety. We're looking for safety. We're looking for safety, security, familiarity, what's known to us. We go into survival mode. That's phase 1, survival mode. And when we're in survival, right, we find that safe space. It's like our cocoon. What's our cocoon? Well, in COVID, what was a cocoon? Your house. Why did everybody move? Because if they didn't like where they lived, or now they had the opportunity to get out of a city that didn't feel safe because it was locking down and they put all these rules and things on them. Now we saw this mass exodus from certain towns moving to different states because the laws were more lenient, because COVID wasn't so locked down there. That's why we started to see change, right? It was that mass exodus that was happening. Well, they were seeking for safety, security. They were protecting themselves, their families. Natural instinct, right? First thing that happens, we're going to go to protect ourselves. Okay. Now, if people sense risk, if people sense risk, they tend not to move forward in life, in things. If it's not safe, if we don't have that safety, security, right, we don't move forward. So even with our clients, if they don't feel safe and secure in their decision in the next house, take that for example. I'm not going to put my house up for sale until I know where I'm going to move. That's most people's pattern of behavior. True. Yeah. So then we know what they're seeking. We solve that problem so that we can have them make that change, take that step. Right. So they need that risk. It's a risk aversion, but they need to feel safe in order to move forward. The problems that we find here is that if you stay in this zone, if you stay in this phase of crisis where we're always seeking for, like, if you're always in survival mode, if you're always in protection and survival mode, then you're going to stay parked there and your business is not going to advance. So think about this with how you might be performing in your business as well. Are we seeking for some sort of, familiarity and security in the thing that we're doing? We see this when we are looking at our lead generation options, and we're going to seek for familiarity in what type of lead gen we're going to do, what our outreach looks like, whether or not we're going to make phone calls, how we're going to talk to people, right? Okay. This now explains why we might be stuck in our business, why we're not jumping out of the gate and making more money. Because maybe you're seeking for something that's so much more familiar, right? Are you in phase 1? Something good to look at. This is the person right now, if you're in this phase that you're kind of holding, you're waiting to see what's going to happen. So even let's say with the changes in commissions, right? Maybe that's the new unfamiliar. We've talked about this. It's unfamiliar territory. Are we going to sit back and wait to see what happens and if people are going to continue to get sued or not? Or are we going to jump out and we're going to have to explore it? If we are just going to sit and try to survive, be in that survival mode and protect ourselves, again, we're going to be less likely to be successful because we're not taking action. We're hunkering down. The best example of this on a corporate level, I guess I would say, or innovative level, would be if you look at the BlackBerry versus the iPhone. BlackBerry didn't want to innovate. They didn't want to move out of where they were, right? They didn't want to think bigger, broader, differently. They wanted to stay safe and secure in the thing that they were doing. They thought they had a great product. Everything was fine. It was good, right? And then here comes the iPhone. Blows it out of the water, like totally blows your mind. Okay, here's another concept for you. So are we like mentally staying in phase 1 in our routines? We've talked a lot about routines, how we're supporting ourselves from the day to day. So maybe part of our desire is that we want to move forward in our business. It's a good possibility, right? We have that desire. We're trying to move forward and do different things in our business. But yet, have we changed the way that we're behaving, those support systems? Have we gotten ourselves out of just that safety, security, familiarity in order to do something different, to be able to support yourself in a different way so you can show up different in your business and make progress? This is a lot of, this last week, I got to be trained by Ed Mylett. Ed Mylett's absolutely amazing. And Ed Mylett he does 3 mini days every day. And in those 3 mini days, he goes from 6 a.m. to 12, and then from 12 to 6, and then 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. That's how he breaks up his day. So instead of having one 24-hour period, which is what we've been running off of for, time and all eternity, he now breaks his day up into 3 mini days. And as I'm listening to this, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around it, right? A 24-hour day is like phase 1. It's like that. It's that survival. It's the safety. It's the normal. It's the where we're used to being, right? Okay. It's where we might like come back to, something we would come back to. So as he's explaining these 3 mini days, I'm like, okay, let me wrap my head around that. So really, if you are breaking your day up into 3 mini days, the concept is if I have an off day, now I have an off day for 6 hours, and then I reset and I recalibrate. And then I have my next day, right? I can be more productive because I'm not allowing this 24-hour period. It's just the concept that we're caging ourselves in. It's the concepts that we're caging ourselves in, right? So what concepts are you caging yourself in that might be keeping you in a phase one security position? So our phase two. Phase two goes into stress management mode. This is coping. We're coping in phase two. So we feel safe and secure now, right? Everybody moved, they got a house. They found their place. Now they feel secure because that's kind of our like physical desires to feel secure. Now we still have to cope though, which is kind of like processing our emotions a little bit, emotions as well, I feel like, is where we get into this coping. Okay. So now that we're physically taken care of, we're going to process our emotions. We're going to go into stress management mode, coping. This is our wellness, our recovery, our mental health, relaxation. Also, this is skill acquisition. So let's dive into like some of these specifically. Let me hit the skill acquisition for just a second. So you can feel safe and secure in the company that you're with, the logo that you have, all the things, right? You've like acquired that, let's say. But now in phase two, you're like, okay, I'm going to just keep acquiring skills. This is the constant learner. This is where we just keep staying in learning mode. We're going to keep learning, but we're not taking the action. And I would just tell you, I was just in a group of high performers, high achievers, always reaching for more. And there are still people in that group who struggle with that. What's the next thing I need to learn before I take action? What's the next thing I need to learn before I take action? Right? I need to be smarter. I need to be better. I need to do it a different way. I need to have my Instagram look a different way. I need to all the things. And then we continue with that skill acquisition. We're just trying to manage the way that we feel so that when we take that step out, we think we're going to feel more confident. That's what we're doing. We're preparing, but we're preparing for a reason. Some people say that you're preparing to prepare to do something, right? Well, take that to a whole nother level. Dig down just a little bit deeper. Why are we doing that? What is it that we're going to be achieving if we keep preparing? Confidence. We're looking for more confidence. And if we keep acquiring skills, then we'll have more confidence. And if I have more confidence, I'll do my job better. I for sure will go make more money. I'll be better at it if I have more confidence, right? So we're going to stay here acquiring more skills until I'm confident. And now we're going to stay stuck in phase two, acquiring but never taking action. Now, how do we get out of that? Is just by recognizing that we're in that pattern of acquiring because we're seeking to fulfill a part of you that, by the way, you will never feel like enough, no matter how many courses you take, no matter how much you learn. You will never get to a point where some magic course or some magic coach or some magic trainer is going to make you feel like you are enough. Never going to happen. This comes from within you. It's the hard work. It's the deep work that we have to do. The hard, deep work. And you have to be willing to do the hard, deep work to get out of phase two. The hard, deep work. You have to ask the next question, because I think most of us can recognize what we're doing, possibly like that I'm a constant learner. We identify it, we say it. Ask the next layer of a question. What is it that I'm getting out of that? What's that doing for me? What am I seeking? We're always seeking to fulfill some sort of emotion. That piggybacks off of my previous podcast when I talked about seeking for safety, security, but I was seeking outside of myself to have someone else make me feel safe and secure. I was in phase one. That previous podcast, when I was running away, I was seeking for safety and security. I was trying to find my footing. But I was seeking for it in other people, in other places, in other things. I was seeking for things outside of myself. And you see that so often. You do see that so often, I would say, in divorce as well, where people jump so fast and they go find a new partner. And why do they do that? because they feel so not safe. They don't have their footing. And instead of taking time to heal and feel safe and secure in themselves, they just go find a replacement, right, to fill that hole. And then that's why they always say, like, you just take all of your problems with you. Well, because you never actually felt safe and secure yourself. You never found that. You just looked for it in someone else. Now you're always wanting someone else to make you feel a certain way. So now when you go back into crisis mode or something happens, it's always someone outside of you that has to make you feel better. That's being powerless, though, right? We don't have our power when we're doing that. Now, is it painful, hard work? It sure is. But it does come to an end. Like, I mean, I say an end. You get better at it. You can master it. Somebody said to me, just a little side note for a second, when I'm in this group, it cracks me up. When I'm in my professional, my ultra group, and there's some very successful people in there, very successful people who are way smarter than me, by the way, who have it together way more than I do, more education, more corporate experience, like this crazy corporate experience. And they look to me. I had breakfast with one of them yesterday, and she's got amazing corporate experience. And she's looking to me like I'm something so special. And I'm like, you have so much more like knowledge than I do, right? I'm like making it up half the time. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I have knowledge, but like really, she's like, she's got it together. And she's like, but what's so interesting about what we'd identified in her is that she stays in that phase 2 in the skill acquisition. She's got all the knowledge, but she doesn't ever take the action because she's lacking confidence. So it's like, so as we're in this group together and we're discussing, you know, they're looking at me like I'm some sort of like fancy, like I feel like fancy is always the word that I use. I'm like, I'm not fancy. They're like, yeah, but I think the thing that they're seeing that's like drawing them to me is that I'm taking action. I think that's the differentiating factor right there, is that I'm just willing to get out and take action. And yes, I'm acquiring skills, but I also am not waiting to acquire enough skills to go take action or enough to make me feel like I'm enough to go take action. So I'll still jump into that phase 3 of taking action before I like feel like I'm fulfilled in skills, right? So there's a balance. Now, can I improve? 1,000%. Could I get more skills? Yes, that's something that I need to work on. So there's still a balance there. But yeah, I'm like, guys, like why, like literally I get surrounded by these people and it like blows my mind. I'm like, I'm not that, you know, not that special. Right. And they're like, oh, but you're mayor and you do this stuff. And like, just like, oh my gosh, no, like it's blowing their mind. And I'm like, does it? Boy, like, you know, because to me, I'm like, I still have so much to learn. Right. But what they're seeing is what they're wishing they had, which is not staying stuck in phase 2 in their business and being willing to get out and move into phase 3. So interesting. So in that phase 2, like this is transitional phase. Phase 2 is transition, but some people get stuck in transition, right? So this is where you're pivoting. So this is where when you have a change in life, change in job, like this whole crisis mode could be somebody loses a job and now you have to shift. Now you have to change. Well, we get stuck in here. We can also get stuck on like our wellness, our recovery, our mental health is super important. And one of the things that was pointed out by Brendon Burchard was that and corporate, they spent a lot of time after COVID focusing on the mental health and the wellness and taking care of yourself, because it's true. Like we had this big shock and now we had to really like make sure that we were doing the stress management and working on the mental health. But we also can get stuck in that. We cannot move out of almost like, I don't want to say requiring more of ourselves. That's not really the right way to say it. And I even say this for myself, right? Like I could get stuck in sadness and want to make sure that I'm, you know, safe and secure all the time. And I'm like those coping skills. I could stay in those coping skills for a very long time. And some people will do that. Okay. But they're never pushing themselves or stepping their foot into the next phase to allow themselves the growth. So we still have to look and seek for the growth in order to move and get out of the one space that we're in. Does that make sense? So like we do have to have like the mental health and the wellness recovery. Like I'm all over that. Like I am the gal who'd been on antidepressants for 25 years. Right? Like you still have to take care of the mental health and be aware of that all the time. And sometimes you might pop back down to phase 2, mind you. As we move into phase 3, which I'll explain in a minute, we may sometimes have to pop back down into phase 2 and go into stress management mode. You know, maybe it became a little bit too much. We come back down. As an example, I literally just worked on this. So I was gone. I had 4 days of a conference. It's the most intensity I've had for long. It was like 9 a.m. we were out to like 10 p.m. because we had dinners every night. So I was around like a couple of thousand people from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Okay. A lot of people. And I was pretty good. Day 1, day 2, good energy. Everything was good. By day 3, my body, I was tired. And I started out the day tired. And then I tried to go to the conference. And then I became emotional. And then I started crying. And I was like, okay. So my nervous system was telling me, Lisa, you need rest. And this is like, it was overstimulation at that point that I wasn't strong enough to handle that much more that day, right? I had like maxed myself out. And then because I didn't stay and maybe rest a little bit longer that day and maybe just watch online from my hotel, I pushed myself and I went, but then I ended up crying. So I was like, okay, so that was too much. That was too much. So then I was like, so I left, you know, I had to step out. I went back to the hotel. I kind of took a beat, took some rest so I could recover. Sometimes like we push ourselves. So that's like stepping your foot into phase 3, that growth, which I did. So I didn't stay home and not go to the conference, afraid that I might not be able to handle it because I can tend to get overly overdone and my nervous system is kind of get shot, right? I still did it, but then was aware and maybe had to pull back a little bit. And as we do that, very similar to what Eric and Emily Orton taught us at conference, which is it's like you go out a little bit and then you come back. And then the next time you're going to go out a little bit more, right? When they did this with their sailing trips and they were scouting out, they didn't just go all the way out to find the next island. Like they would go out a little bit and then they would come back and they'd go out a little bit more and then they would come back. And that's how we start to get that growth. Well, this is me. Like I'm going to go out a little bit more and then come back. And literally before I even went to this conference, I had planned on getting on a plane and going to the East Coast. And I was like, I might just go eat, pray, love myself down the East Coast. I'd got invited to go to Boston. I was like, maybe I'll go to Boston. And I was like, then I got invited to go to New York. I'm like, I could go to New York. And I had this whole, before I even went to the conference, I had this plan where I was like, oh, it's cheap to fly from LA to New York. So I'll just do that. That would be fun. Well, by day 3, I was like, yeah, Lisa not getting on another flight. Lisa's going home, right? Because my body was like, and you're done. Good job going out and back, right? But now that was enough. It was enough. And it was time to come back in. But that's how we start to find that growth. So what is our in phase 2? What is your out and back? Like, what are the steps that you take to go out to push? Be aware. The awareness is what's key. If you're not aware, if I wasn't aware of why I started crying, how my body was feeling, if I did not have that awareness, I would have just thought that I was a disaster of a person and I was crying. I would have no idea, right? I would just thought I was emotional. Maybe I'm hormonal. Like I wouldn't know. I was very aware of how I felt when I woke up. I was very aware of like literally the feeling that my nervous system was giving me in my body. Super aware of it. So I knew like what was going on for me. Totally knew why. It made perfect sense. Now, when it makes perfect sense, you also are able to give yourself grace. Then it was like, oh, I'm not a failure. There's no failing. It makes perfect sense that I feel the way that I feel. This is totally normal, right? And I'm going to go sit outside or go back to my hotel for a while. And this is what I'm doing today. This is how it's going to work today. right? And then it makes there's no judgment. We don't have to feel bad. We don't have to feel like we didn't do it right. Okay, so in your business, it's the same thing. Out and back. Go out that little bit, come back in. We're going to get out of that comfort, right? And out of just the skill acquisition. What skills have we acquired? How are we going to put them to the test? Start testing them, see how it goes, see the way that you feel. Come back in, do a little recalibration, and then you're going to go out and you're going to do it again. You push a little bit further the next time, and you come back in, you recalibrate again. You push out again. This is how we grow. This is the actual formula for growth. It's by going out and coming back. Okay. How we get out of just being in transition all the time. This also is how we do something without burning ourselves out, by the way. So if we go full force into phase 3 and doing something and we go great guns, but we're not paying attention to that recalibration that we need to have happen. And if I were to just keep going and push myself in great guns, I would have just plummeted by the end of that conference, right? If I was nope, suck it up, Lisa, let's just go, keep in it, whatever, and not give myself that time, that grace, I probably would have crashed. A couple of things happen. I would have crashed and not been worth much for probably a little while. You can have mental breakdowns, right? This is when people push themselves so hard, so far, and they don't give themselves, they're not recalibrating. They don't have the awareness. And so then their body is trying to tell them to stop and they won't stop. They just keep going and going, right? And then they have a meltdown or a breakdown. That happens. This is when people go outward with their emotions. So I cry. Some people don't cry. Men don't generally cry. Men tend to get angry. So they'll generally go outward. So they could feel the same thing. Let's say if you took a man in my position and he were to go do those same, the same scenario, he would probably turn to anger. So then if his spouse called him and asked him a question, might get frustrated and react in anger because he doesn't quite know how he feels, right? Not in touch with that. So then he's going outward with his emotions. And then that's when you start to see a lot of conflict, especially in marriages, in partnerships, where one's going outward with their emotions. The other person starts to react to that because they don't understand why this person's doing this. And then it gets all messy. Right. So once we can have that awareness of why we behave the way that we're behaving, it really takes that whole superficial layer off of it. And we start to have a lot more understanding for each other. And we have a lot more understanding for ourselves. Also have a lot more understanding for our children. Makes sense why our kids react the way they do sometimes, right? Maybe why they say things that they say sometimes. Maybe if they're overdone, if they're not aware of the way that they feel. I had someone ask me, they were taking their kid to college, and she said, what's your number one tip? What's the one thing that you would want to have me do before I take my kid to college? She has a 1 year before her kid goes to college. I said, you teach that child emotional awareness. That is the one thing that if you can learn that skill, you'll be okay. Because you then can not just self-diagnose per se. It's you then can stop the train wreck before it continues to happen, right? It helps in so many ways. We just have to be aware of what's going on for us. Then we can reach out and ask for help. Then we can find the resources that we need. Then we can solve the problem. Then we can have more self-love, self-care. Okay, so phase 2 is that stress management mode. When we're also looking for these are our coping skills. Now, some people in this stress management mode, this is when we go to coping skills that maybe don't serve us. This is maybe where we go to food, alcohol, some people drugs, some people pornography, some people gambling, even over exercising. So this is where all of our overings tend to happen, is if we stay in coping mode for too long, or we're seeking for coping skills that aren't healthy. Because we keep trying to feel better. We don't know why we don't feel good, and we keep trying to feel better. right? So there can be a negative. There's positive ways that we're coping as well here, but there can be. This is where the negative coping skills are also going to happen. Okay. So then that phase 3, let's move into phase 3. So phase 3 is where we find our separation, our success. This is our growth. Just call it growth. That's phase 3 is our growth. Now, the reason why we say separation success is because most people will stay in phase 2. Most people don't want to move into phase 3. They don't know how to move into phase 3. They don't know how to break free to move into phase 3. Phase 3, this is where we have our productivity. This is where we take those skills that we've learned and we apply them. This is our action taking. This is fulfillment. This is all the things that we want, right? Our performance, the influence that we can have on other people. This is feeling alive. This is living our life. This is what I would call maybe living your best life. That's what phase 3 is. Now, it's never going to be free of the challenges, but now that you've gone through phase 1 and phase 2, you are stronger. You found your place of power. So now you can handle the challenges. You're more likely to be successful because you have a good foundation, a foundation for those challenges. Phase 3 is also where you start to expand yourself and find that growth. That's what we're doing in phase 3. This is like that 1%. Most people are going to stay complacent in phase 2 because either they don't know different, they're not willing to go seek to learn to do different, or they don't even look. They think that what life has to offer them is what's right in front of them, right? And they're never seeking to be better because they don't know what better even looks like sometimes. Sometimes they're not shown the path. But phase 3, man, this is where like you go for it. You turn it up. This is your edge. But this is where you become the person that you really want to be. And you start to apply all those things that you've been working on, which is amazing, right? And then remember, sometimes, find something here, sometimes we bounce back if we start to hit a challenge that's a little bit more than what we anticipated, than we maybe were prepared for. We bounce back down into phase 2 a little bit, maybe a little more skill acquisition. And maybe we have to like recalibrate ourselves a little bit. And then we push back into phase 3. So what I'm trying to teach you here, biggest lesson, I think, for your own business, for your own personal, is the differentiation between what happens in each phase. Super important. I want you to identify what phase you're in and then go deeper to say, what is it that has me in this phase? Not just why am I here, but what is it that's keeping me here? What do I need? What am I seeking for? Because you're seeking for something. In each phase that we're in, we're seeking for something. What's the thing you're seeking for? So in my journey that I've had, this is what like blew my mind for just a second. So I'll give you my personal example now. So in my journey, as I revisited this, this is what I wrote down. This is what I saw about myself. So phase 1 was survival and risk aversion. That's the first thing that happened when I decided to get divorced. I went into survival mode and risk aversion. I couldn't handle any more risk at the time. So I was avoiding, I had to shut down, I kind of shut down my business-ish, kind of, right? I had to stop coaching for a little while. I couldn't handle more like hard things. And that was a conversation that I'd had with my assistant often was what feels easy, what feels hard, because I couldn't do hard. The risk aversion for a reason, right? But that was survival for me. So that was phase one. And that was like June. I spent kind of June and July in phase one. Okay. And as I'm like moving from phase one and a little bit like in July, I realized phase two. And phase two for me through this divorce was finding comfort, coping, and skill acquisition. Those are the three words that I have to describe what phase two was for me and still is. So what was so mind-blowing for me was that I couldn't figure out, like, I was wrestling in my head with like, being alone, but being okay being alone. But like, yeah, I was so used to having my kids around and all the people around and having a companion around. And I don't want to go replace my companion, but I'm used to having that comfort. Right. So then starting to realize I was seeking for comfort. And because I had also already mastered not seeking for comfort in food, because I did that for the last couple of years. So now food's not an option. Okay, so I don't have food. I don't use substances at all. Otherwise, I would literally probably just be drinking myself. Like, I understand why people, especially with like in divorce and anything, no judgment. I get it. Like any sort of crisis happens, I get how you could drink it away because it feels so much better. Well, I don't do that. So that's not an option. So I'm like, okay, how am I coping? How am I finding comfort? And just being aware that I needed to find comfort and I needed to figure out what my coping skills were almost brought me relief. It was the weirdest feeling to just almost, I didn't need somebody else to acknowledge that for me. I had to acknowledge it for myself. I had to give myself grace that looked like, Lisa, you are trying to find comfort. You are coping. And you are trying to find new skills to navigate life as a single woman. Oh, that's what I'm doing. Perfect. So then I asked myself, if this is where I'm at in phase two, if this is what my needs are, I've identified my needs now. Now that I know my needs, now I can start to go to work asking myself, how do I want to fulfill those needs? What do I need that helps me feel comfort or cope? Or what skills do I need? That's how I'm going to get out of phase two, because I can't get out of phase two until I feel that comfort, until I feel that safety, security, right? And what was really interesting is I kept trying to push myself into phase three, and I was frustrated that I wasn't being as productive as I always am. Like, I'm always like, my brain is not turned on like it usually is. I have all these things I want to accomplish, but yet I can't make myself do it. Anybody else have that? Where you're like, I'm trying to make myself do something. Yes. But you couldn't make yourself do it. That was where I was at. That's what brought this up. And I'm like, you know what? I need to teach my people about this, because inevitably, if you are in a spot where you're like, I can't make myself, then you need to go a layer deeper and ask another qualifying question. What am I seeking? What am I seeking? What's missing that I need? Because you can't force yourself if you don't have that need met. You can't force yourself into the next phase. And we so often try to just bypass, right? We try to bypass meeting whatever need because we don't stop and identify it. And we just try to push ourselves into the next phase, into productivity. Doesn't work right. We don't show up as our best selves, and we don't make the kind of progress that we can't be extraordinary by pushing ourselves into phase three without identifying and fulfilling the innate needs that we have in phase two. We just can't. So what are you seeking? What is it that you need? How do we find that in a healthy way? In a healthy way. So then phase 3, what I wrote down was productivity, build positive relationships, expand myself, psychological necessity, growth. That's what my phase 3 looks like. I'm going to be expanding myself. I'm going to be growing. I'm going to be building new positive relationships. That's what my phase 3 is all about, right? And being productive, that productivity. What's also really interesting is I feel like I'm like straddling the line where I'm like, I've got 1 foot in phase 3, but I still have 1 foot in phase 2. I'm like right up the middle. So that's why my focus has turned to, okay, what is it that's not, that I need to find in that comfort piece? So I feel that safety, security, so I can just launch like a freaking rocket into phase 3. That's where we need to get, right? Launch like a rocket into phase 3. But what are we missing? And then I put on here, become the best of who I am, build high performance habits, and advance life again. And isn't that what it's about? If you're on my texting, I'll text you this, by the way. It's on my whiteboard. I literally 2 weeks ago when I did this, I literally just wrote notes. I was like, oh my gosh, blew my mind. It was like the biggest revelation ever for me. But advance life again. Like that's what we're looking to do, is just advance our life. And now you all have the formula for how to advance life and how to recalibrate when new adventures happen. Sometimes crisis, sometimes just change. Sometimes it's moving. We've had people that move cities and then you have to reinvent your business, right? Okay, you're going to go back into crisis mode when you move cities, maybe even when you change brokerages. Go back to this formula and identify where you're at and what you need to fulfill, because this doesn't change. This is who we are and what we need as people, right? This is human behavior change. And we saw this on the greatest scale in the entire world during COVID. The best case study that you could ever have was COVID. And you know, some people are still in phase 2. And we're 5 years later, 4 years later, and some people are still in phase 2 after COVID. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So I hope that helps you, serves you. I know it will help you, serve you. Apply it, use it, be aware, write it down, keep it. And keep applying it, keep recalibrating. Recalibrating is my new favorite word, but it is. It's like recalibrate often. The more often we recalibrate, the more often that we can be able to continue to make progress, make faster progress. It's how we win and feel great. So appreciate your time today. Glad you guys came. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Let's open it up for any questions. You can just unmute. Or just tell me if this was helpful. What did you learn?
I don't have a question, Lisa, and I just wanted to say thank you. I feel I'm a phase 2 right now. So I like what you're saying of, okay, let's go out and play a little bit and then back.
Yes.
And do it little by little so I can just build the confidence to like just get out there.
Yes.
So thank you. The timing was perfect.
Perfect. I always say, if I don't, as unfun as some of these experiences are that I'm having, I'm like, if I don't, capitalize isn't the right word, but if I don't share them and what I'm learning, what's it all for? Right? Because I am learning some pretty crazy, amazing things, I feel like, through this whole freaking process. It's like life-changing. It's nuts. So good. Love that, Myrna. Anybody else? Oh,
Hello, Lisa. Hi, everyone. Hello. Sorry,
Dara.
couldn't get the microphone.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing. It helps to make certain situations real, and not think that it's only in my head,
Yes.
and to know that other persons, or you in particular, have dealt with, these things and come through them
Yeah.
with holding your head out. So it
Yeah.
gives encouragement. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, it does make you feel like you're kind of crazy sometimes, huh? Like you're the only person experiencing it, or like, yes, that's a good point, Indira. I love that.
Especially when you see some people, they've gone through it and they seem to still be like, just discounting it basically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how, so thanks again. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you. I love that. Yeah. Jackie, I'm going to pick on you for a second. Can I pick on you? Okay. You had a lot of change with your dad, right? Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So where do you feel like you were at? And could you see your behavior, your pattern of behavior in that?
I see it now that you're talking about it because I'm going to cry about it, but
Sorry, I know I was picking on you.
it's okay. I know that I paid to come to your conference and I just couldn't bring myself to come because of all that. And so I just want to do better. And with you breaking down these phases, I'm still in phase one.
Okay. Okay. But isn't that so good to know?
It's good to know, but also, um, when things like that happen and you just have to find your place in doing your business and then helping to care for loved ones that dying
Yes.
is very hard.
Yes.
It's very hard to find your place in everything that you do and to continue to move and know that you're going to be okay. And that's the point of where I am because I'm an introvert.
Mhm.
And I know that sometimes it doesn't seem like it, but I do need people around me, good people, and not just naysayers that just say, oh, okay, it's going to be okay. It's good. You need that band of sisters that are going to be behind you to just make you know that you're going to be okay. And I know that coming back into the group and, doing the challenges and things like that, that I will get better. And I just look for that because that was a very tough situation.
That was a very tough situation, Jackie. It was a very tough situation.
Very.
You know what? I don't know that it's about doing better though, either. It's just acknowledging where you're at and what you need,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we all need something at a different time. And I think that the feeling like we should do better, or it's if we shift that more to what do I need to fulfill? Like, it's almost like nutrition. Like, I'm hungry. My body's hungry. What is my body needing from me? Right? We do that with nutrition, but we don't do that with this emotion.
Right.
And when we experience such hard things, especially with family loss, it's like, what am I needing? What's the nutrition that my body's needing right now? And sometimes, by the way, sometimes it does look like for me, hardest thing I had to do was not coach you guys for a month. That was the hardest decision I had to make, is to let that down, to set it down and go, I can't do this. I can't. But that's what I had to do because that's what my body needed at the time. So looking to see, like, what is it that you need? If you're in one, you're still trying to find that, that safety. So what does it look like to feel safe? And yeah, it's going to look different because you are missing a family member now, right? So then safety looks, which for me, same thing. I mean, not death, but
Right.
death of a 26-year marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't have someone next to me anymore.
Right.
So it feels very much like isolating and kind of like I'm like a pendulum now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you need? And then how do you find that? in other ways.
Right.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
for
thank you
sharing.
picking on me. Yeah.
I know. I know. I
It's
love
not
you.
a bad thing. I mean, it's good, but I mean, if you don't, I feel like this, if you don't find what you need, you're gonna stay stuck.
Yes.
And I don't want to keep digging that hole deeper
Mhm.
because it makes it that much harder to get out of. And so I'm gonna go through this phase 1 and get to 2. And I'm not gonna take 3 months to get there, but that's my opinion. But I need to figure it out.
Yeah. What do you need? Just ask that question. What are you seeking? What do you need? There is an answer. If you give yourself that option, there's an answer in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Your body and your mind will answer what it is that it needs to feel safe and secure now.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that my uncle told me, he said that when people pass, it means that you have to grow up even more because you're going to miss them and there's going to be things that you're going to see that you did and they're going to be right there beside you to tell you that you can make it. So I'm looking forward to that.
It's amazing.
But thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you for being here too. We're glad to have you back. Yes. Okay. Anybody else want to share today? It's a good note to end on. You guys are amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. I know, right? This was a little bit much to do on Wednesday afternoon. That's why I moved it to Friday because I knew it was kind of a more of a topic that, and I wasn't, I wasn't in the right space to be able to handle it yet either. So anyway.
Great decision, Lisa, moving it.
So good. Okay. Love you guys. Make sure you're on Slack. Hit me up. It gets notifications on my phone, you guys. So you can text me, Slack. You need me for anything, let me know. I am now moving that phase 3 so I can get the program. I've been telling myself, right? You guys have the new program coming, all the things. Yeah. That's part of my frustration, Lisa. Like productivity. It's coming. I promise. That's my goal for this whole month is to get myself to keep moving through that. So it's coming. Keep working. Let me know if you need something. Okay. Always here for you. Okay. All right. Have a wonderful weekend. Love you all. Okay. Bye, guys.